I have been seeing way too many clips of Jimmy Dore just messing up and just being, odd to say the least. Now, just as I criticized David Pakman for what I perceived to be or what thought was sort of a bad segment, I'm going to be doing the same thing here with Jimmy Dore. This stuff is a lot wonkier than what I talked about there, though, and this is going to get a little bit crazy here. So, first of all, we're going to look at this clip of Jimmy Dore. Now, Jimmy Dore is on Aggressive Progressives, which is his TYT show that he has, and I believe that Steve-O is like his co-host. And then I think they bring on other guests every once in a while. And I'm not even sure if Steve-O is like I think he's the permanent co-host, but I'm not sure. But he's legitimately, and he's going to be, rightfully angry at what he calls McCarthyite smears, which essentially is just, you show opposition to the Democrats, and so people just respond with saying you're a Russian bot or you're paid by the Russians or something, it's unbelievably insane like that. And so that is what is going to be shown here, and he's rightfully angry about that, but his response is going to be utterly unhinged, and he's actually going to advocate here for making that specifically illegal, and he's talking about a Washington Post columnist, I believe, and he's going to say that what he said should be illegal and that he should be thrown in jail.
So after World War II and the Holocaust, in Germany, correct me if I'm wrong, did they not make it illegal to be a Nazi and give the Nazi salute? It's
still illegal.
Still illegal to give the Nazi salute.
Yes.
After the Red Scare and what they did to people in the United States during the McCarthyite smears, people lost their jobs and careers got ruined. People committed suicide and all. This should be illegal to do McCarthyite smears. We should have made it illegal, and now guys like Josh Rogan would have to go to prison, and he would have to know what actual shame is, because apparently his parents did a horrible job raising him, and he doesn't have that thing that connects shame to his actions.
No, you don't mean that, because that's a significant infringement on speech, and the Red Scare.
He should go to jail for this? I think if you can make it illegal, if you can make it illegal to give the Nazi salute,
well, they don't
it
have
should be illegal.
They don't
to do
have freedom of speech like we have in the U.S.
Okay,
it's totally different standard, and also you're not. I know because people, your critics will say this. So let me just diffuse them right now.
Oh, okay,
you're not equating the Red Scare with the Holocaust. You're not doing that.
No.
Right? Yes.
No.
So.
It's amazing to watch a table full of people being sponsored by the people they're supposed to be investigating attack a veteran who's telling the truth about the Syrian war. They attacked her. They tried to corner her, call her an Assad apologist. These are journalists. These are journalists from CNN tweeting out Tulsi Gabbard is an Assad apologist. Tulsi Assad 2020. That's what they're doing. These are, again, after the World War II in Germany, they made it illegal to give the Hitler salute, right? It should have been after the Red Scare in the United States that we made it illegal to do that again. Unfortunately, we didn't, and now MSNBC can do it 24/7.
Well, I think I'm going to thank MSNBC and the rest of them, because in the last week, this show has been reaching 3.4 million people, and that's a bigger audience than I had when I had a show on both at CNN and MSNBC. So, hey.
Congratulations, buddy.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, so obviously that's really, really crazy. The idea of, throwing someone in jail is definitely the craziest part of this statement for obvious reasons. Now, a Jimmy Dore supporter might say, oh, well, libel isn't free speech. It is illegal. That is true, but you don't get thrown in prison for libel, which, by the way, is extremely hard to prove in court. And so you have to go through the court process, and the burden of proof is on you to prove libel. And that's what makes this, dually ridiculous, is that libel is libel, and libel, if you are to make that, illegal, libel is already illegal, so go to it through the libelous way. But the point here being is that libel is illegal, but it's not a criminal offense. You can't get thrown in prison for, committing libel. That is absolute insanity. You're talking about, it's a civil offense. You get fined for being libelous. You don't go to prison for that. And I'm not sure if Jimmy Dore knows that, because it seems very clear that Jimmy is not, he's not the brightest of the bunch, to say the least. And I mean, that's common knowledge, obviously. I mean, he kind of advertised himself that way. But we're going to get to a clip in a while from now talking and showing you guys about that. But you could still pursue that through the means of libel, where you go to the court system and say, hey, I am being libeled and defamed by this person who's saying, I'm a Russian stooge or something like that, when it's clearly a lie. Now, McCarthy was a senator who basically had accused, I believe, like a bunch of state officials in the Truman administration, and I think other administrations too, of just being commies and basically trying to end their careers using that smear, which is a horrible thing, and now we all know it as McCarthyism. The thing is that the response to that is not to make this a jailable offense, and he uses the word, both per word, jail and prison, which aren't the same thing. Prison is obviously where you actually get held for your sentence. And jail is just a detention center. So I don't understand how your response to that is putting people in jail for it. That doesn't make any sense. And what's even crazier is, without these co-hosts to come in and save Jimmy Dore, I really don't know where he would be, because if you let Jimmy Dore go on these live streams and go on his monologues and what he's talking about, and it's just random thoughts that come to mind, you're in big trouble, dude. Like, you're in some real big trouble. And so all of these clips that we, cover of Jimmy Dore kind of just going off the rails always end up being his live streams. They always end up being him trying to give some thought process that's not really on script or on topic. And it just ends up coming out as this huge, just pool of ridiculousness. Think about it, dude. Jimmy Dore just advocated putting, let's say some Washington Post author posts on, an article, Jimmy Dore's a Russian stooge or whatever. He says that we should put them in prison, not even just jail, but literal prison, where you go to serve your sentences, not where you're held in detention to serve your sentence. That is absolute fucking insanity. It's hilariously stupid. In fact, it's actually kind of scary stupid, because the idea of that is insane. And remember, guys, libel is something that requires an insane amount of proof. It requires an insane burden of proof upon the person who is the accuser. But this gets, and Steve-O points out there, saying, because he's talking about how, Nazis in Europe, in countries in Europe, some countries in Europe it's outlawed. In Germany it's outlawed, and I think it's a criminal offense there. And it's a criminal offense in like Poland and a couple of other ones, and some other ones it's civil ones. But he's using that as an example here. So first of all, as Steve-O points out, we don't have the same types of free speech laws. And genuinely speaking, that issue of whether or not the, Hitler salute should be, or the Nazi salute should be illegal in Europe today is sort of a question I don't really have an answer to. But this position that he has is going to become it's going to become a problem for him, because he said other things on different occasions. And so he's trying to use other nations, and Steve-O brings this up, saying, hey, let me make sure that your detractors don't say that you're equating the Holocaust and the McCarthyite smears, because if you read into it, that's sort of kind of what he's getting at there, because there's no similarity between the McCarthyite smears and, what Hitler did and the Nazis did. And so to really have me agree with you, which I don't, obviously, because you're wrong, that McCarthyite smears should be, a prison, a jailable offense to be put in prison, because there's Nazi, anti-Nazi laws in Germany, you'd have to, give me rationale as to, oh, these are both similar in a way, and they both have the same, which obviously they're not even close. But here's a really big problem. Now, you guys know Jimmy Dore was a big Alex Jones free speech defender, and he actually cited the free speech of Nazis in the United States to prove his point. Check it out.
Are you stunned, Ron, by the people on the left who are getting this wrong? Because I am. I get you hate Alex Jones.
Yeah,
I get it. We all hate that shit, what he does.
Well, even in all of our videos, we're just like, we're not defending Alex Jones. Here's the principle. And every third or fourth comment, they're defending Alex Jones now. Like, really?
Even other guys with shows have said that shit. You're defending. It's like, you've never heard the counter argument to that. This is the first time you're ever discussing this stuff? When I was a kid, I grew up in Chicago. The Nazis would march every year in Skokie, which was a Jewish suburb of Chicago. And the ACLU would always support them. Would you say, why are you defending Nazism? They're not. They're defending the principle of free speech, and we all knew it. Nobody blamed the ACLU for defending freedom of speech of the Nazis to march. We all knew that that's what made us a great country. We all knew that instinctively. Nobody was like, why don't they ban them? I don't ever, if that people were doing that when I was a kid, I don't remember that people doing that in Chicago. We all just knew it. We had to accept it. That's the beauty of our country.
Yeah, so Jimmy, you've got to pick one, my dude. You can't be doing both of these. As I just showed you guys in the Aggressive Progressives clip, he's citing the banning of Nazi salutes as a something that exists in Europe, doesn't even exist in the United States, so it's not even on the same plane, and Steve-O pointed that out. But he's citing the, essentially what's, I don't know, maybe a steel man, or it's really an agreement that he's doing, where he says that in the U.S. we should have McCarthyite smears as a jailable offense to be put in prison, which it doesn't make sense, because in one clip, you're using the free speech of Nazis, which exists in the country of the United States, as a positive and a reason as to why we should defend the free speech of someone like Alex Jones. And in the other clip, you're citing the crackdown of free speech on Nazis in another country as good. So is it, which one is it? Because those two can't coexist. Which one do you want? Do you want it to be that, there's free speech for Nazis, whether it be in the United States or Europe, or, do you want it to be the opposite of that? Which one is it, Jimmy? Because I really don't know. I'm very confused by this, but it's starting to, I don't know, just seem like he kind of keeps repeating the line of after the McCarthyite smears, this should have been made illegal or something like that. The talking point is kind of being put on repeat here, but you've got to choose one, dude, because either it's good to have Nazis have free speech, or it's bad to revoke their free speech due to, the principle of free speech. I mean, you really have to choose one. And so you can't be saying both of these, and this is where these kinds of things start to collide. And by the way, remember the case of Alex Jones, he was obviously being, defamatory in what he was saying, and then that defamation would result in, he would lie on air about the Sandy Hook massacre, and then his cancerous, insane, lunatic fans would go and harass the victims, the families of the victims, and they would harass them. So he was being defamatory, and that would result in harassment. Now what we're talking about here is libel. So he's defending in one situation what is essentially defamation, which is hard to prove in court, and we'll see how that case ends up going. And then in the other one, he's saying that someone should be thrown in prison for it. So you've got to make up your mind, Jimmy. But guys, seriously, the idea of putting people in prison for this McCarthyite smear, not even a McCarthyite smear, it's just calling someone a Russian stooge on Twitter, or writing an article in the news calling someone a Russian stooge, should not warrant someone being thrown in prison. Having him, sort of be determined libelous is a whole nother conversation to be had, which I would be much more open to, and that is a civil punishment, not a criminal one. So you're not being put in jail for libel, you're being fined. So there's a really, really big difference, and Jimmy is really starting to go kind of wonky and off the rails here, and it's kind of crazy. But as I mentioned earlier, he's not the brightest of the bunch. In fact, it gets pretty cringy to watch. And this super chat might have been a troller, I don't know, but either way it ended up being pretty effective for them. But they basically asked the question of, what do you think of an alliance between the nationalists and the socialists? Anytime you hear the two words nationalists and socialists, in your head there should be a siren going, just off really loud, because the National Socialists, that's the Nazi party, okay? That's what they were. They were the National Socialist, Workers' Party. That's what they were. So Jimmy Dore's going to be asked this, and he doesn't even know. He can't, when he's asked about this, he can't even recognize that is, and I'm assuming the person was trolling, because this clearly seems like the setup for bait here, but just watch, man.
And they go, oh, if you look, Jimmy's got right-wingers watching his show.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Oh my God.
They're in our family, by the way.
As if they're Nazis or something. They're Americans, right? Which you're supposed to work bipartisanly.
5 minutes later.
Jimmy, many on the nationalist right appreciate your honest critique of the neoliberal fraudsters that purport to represent the left and right. How about a socialist-nationalist alliance? Nick X wants to know your thoughts on that.
What is that? Well, what does nationalist actually mean, Ron? Do you know? You're a professor.
I'm not, but
Certainly in the context of this society, it's hard to figure out what nationalists would mean.
I don't know what a nationalist. Does that mean? I don't know. I really don't know what that means. I'm looking it up. Nationalist. A nationalist, a person who advocates political independence for a country. A person with strong patriotic feelings, especially one who believes in the superiority of their country over others. Well, I'm not a nationalist, I guess.
I don't believe in that.
So the question that person had, do I think the left and the nationalists and the libertarian? I thought, so I like using the term libertarian.
yeah, I don't think that's what they're asking.
No?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what they're
nationalism
asking.
normally, whenever I hear that term used, it's always a pejorative.
Yeah.
It always means that you're like either a racist or a half a turn the screw away from being one.
Mm-hmm.
No? I mean, that's when I hear that
No,
word.
no,
Even though
me
that's
too.
not what these definitions say, I'm just telling you about how I've heard it used colloquially. So I don't know what that guy.
Well, it takes on a contemporary definition.
I would need-
but I don't think this person is calling for, like left-leaning people, libertarians, to come together on things like ending war and stuff like that. I don't think that's what they're
he's
getting
calling
at.
for the Steve Bannon right and the progressive left to come together.
I think so. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure.
Steve
it's
Bannon
not...
is an insidious fuck, man. Don't get taken in because he says a few non-interventionist shit things that you might like.
Yeah, he's terrible.
He's terrible.
Yeah.
Don't fucking be taken in by him.
I think the person was being sarcastic too.
Oh,
I think that was,
tough to tell.
it was kind of tough to tell, but
Okay.
Peter version 1.
I'm actually not even going to criticize Jimmy for looking up the definition of a nationalist. I don't even have a problem with that. The thing that I have a problem with is when you're asked the question of an alliance of nationalist and socialist, and you don't even know, especially when you've seemingly in the clips we just showed you, he talks about Nazis a lot. He talks about them quite a bit, quite often. So if you talk about the Nazis, you should know that they were the National Socialist, German Workers' Party. That's what you're supposed to know. But it's clear that he doesn't know that. But, credit to him for calling out Steve Bannon there at the end, because Steve Bannon is indeed a fake populist, and he's a total fraud and a sham. And so, credit to him for that there. But all this is meant to say is a lot of times Jimmy Dore, if he's not on a specific topic in sort of a set script and doesn't have strong supervision, he is going to say absolutely insane shit, like throwing, what he deems to be libelous journalists in prison for specific McCarthyite smears. And, he's not able to recognize nationalist and socialist alliance. And then going off in his head, it doesn't go off in his head like, oh shit, Nazis. So this is it's just bad. And I think that most people will agree with that he's not the brightest of the bunch, because often I see the defense of Jimmy Dore in these cases tend to be that he's a jack-off late night comedian. So I don't even see how you could sort of, go against that. But anyways, man, Jimmy can get better. I don't know why he's saying this kind of crazy nonsense, as well as just being so grossly uninformed.